Be yourself positive. Just another mindset.
Hello friends, and welcome to a new episode of the Just Another Mindset podcast. The show that inspires you to live a more exciting life. My name is Ismael, and each week I bring to you a topic, a theme, or a conversation that will not only entertain you, but that will help you to change towards a more meaningful and satisfying life, individually and collectively. Let's embrace collective change for the better. Today, we want to talk about my current top book recommendations for you guys. So lately, I've got a lot of private messages from you guys asking for books and asking for recommendations. I have already shared a few of them on Instagram, and you may as well check out the post I written over there. But I thought I'd dedicate a full podcast episode to give you some thoughts on the books that I read last year, or on some books that I read last year, and why they would be good for you to read as well. So why should you care? Well, for me, reading books broadens the horizon. Exchanging thoughts and ideas on books is always good fun, and there's always a great book to explore. So I would like to make this a common process and ask you for your book recommendations as well. What are books that you have read? What are books that you think would be a good fit for me? So for me, the main takeaways of these episodes are that first, you should stay curious. You should stay excited about life and explore. Second, that you should spend more time with people you like and less with people you don't like. And third, that we are the first generation to have all the evidence for climate change, and that we are also the last generation to do something about it before it becomes irreversible. So I have selected 6 books out of a longer list of books that I read last year to discuss in a little bit more detail in this podcast today. I invite you to ask more questions about particular books, and I also invite you to comment on the books if you have read them yourselves or if you are planning to read them. Each of the 6 books has a particular meaning for me, and it has reasons why I present them today. So I would be curious to hear if you have read the book yourself, if you have read books from the author yourself, what do you think about it? And do you maybe have also a different opinion on this particular book or on the meaning of this book? Again, this is a very personal summary and a very personal conclusion of those books. This is what those books mean to me. If you're interested in the full list of books that I read in the past year, just reach out and I'm more than happy to share it with you. Also, if you want to have personalized book recommendations, I'm more than happy to discuss with you. But for today's episode, let's look into the 6 books that I have selected to discuss here. The first one is Brief Answers to the Big Questions by Stephen Hawking. The second is Letters from a Stoic by Seneca. The third one is Utopia by Sir Thomas More. The fourth book that I've selected is In Pursuit of the Common Good by Newman A.E. Hotchner, which is followed by the 5th book, Humankind by Rutger Bregman. And we will finish up with Speed and Scale by Doerr. So I will try to give this conversation some structure that I will follow through for each of the books. I will start off with some key facts and figures about the book. How long did it take me roughly to read the book? What is the category? Whom do I think it's made for? This will be followed by a brief summary, a very personal brief summary of what the book is and what the main takeaways are. And then we will use selected quotes that I highlighted in the book and that have a meaning for me and discuss them. I, of course, invite you to stick around for the commentary on all of the 6 books. But if you have one book in particular that you would like to hear more about, please feel free to use the speaker notes to navigate there. And if there is a book that you are planning to read and you don't want too many spoilers for it, that's of course perfectly fine. So you may skip this particular book and come back after you finished yourself. And again, I invite you to join the personal discussion. Just text me, what do you think about it, and do we align on the understanding of the books? The first book I would like to look into in today's episode is Brief Answers to the Big Questions by Stephen Hawking. I guess it took me around 5 to 6 hours to read the book, which I would categorize in physics. And it's a very easy read that has 10 chapters that each deals with one of the big questions. And as the title suggests, it offers brief answers to those important questions. Is there a God? How did the universe get created? And so forth. I must say that I really enjoy this book and gift it quite frequently because it gives an interesting, refreshing perspective on what's important in life and what is not. It also lets you understand the whole universe and why things are happening the way they are a little bit better. And for me, it was a very amusing and fun read. And I think in particular, it's so interesting and fun to read because it is easy to understand and each and everybody can follow Stephen Hawking on his journey through the universe. It's a book for young and old. So let's take a look at some quotes from the book that resonated with me a lot. For those who are not only listening but watching, I will read out the exact quote and then talk to why it resonated with me and why I deem it an important quote of the book. The first quote of Brief Answers to the Big Questions would be, "Human intelligence is the result of generations of natural selections, of those with the ability to adapt to changed circumstances. We must not fear change." To me, it's a very interesting and true statement. We must not fear to change. We must not fear to rethink our positions. Only if we evolve, we will make sure to live the best possible present and future. For me, this is true for a species, for humanity. But for me, this is also true for each and every individual. Only if we accept that we are not always right, if we accept that we should rethink our positions, if we accept that we can learn and develop, we will thrive as an individual, but also as a collective. The second quote that resonated with me a lot is the following. "So remember to look up at the stars and not down at your feet. Try to make sense of what you see and wonder about what makes the universe exist." For me, it's a wonderful quote that reminds us to stay excited, to stay curious, to ask questions, and to explore. If we are keen on getting to know something, if we are keen on learning more, we will have a fun and exciting life. We can always try to become more knowledgeable on the topics that actually interest us. And the third and final quote from Brief Answers to the Big Questions from Stephen Hawking that I want to present today is the following one. "But it would be an empty universe indeed, if it were not for the people I love and who love me. Without them, the wonder of it all would be lost on me." I think that resonates with me because I'm also a big relationships person. I am very happy to have a good relationship to my family, and I'm very happy to call good friends my close friends. For me, relationships to other people are among the most important things in my life. And also, it's a good reminder for me to invest your time, your most valuable resource, into friends, into relationships, and not into tangible objects. The next book I want to take a closer look at is Letters from a Stoic from Seneca. It took me roughly 12 hours of reading to finish this book, and I would categorize it somewhere between philosophy and self-development. There's a lot of good nuggets in there, and for me, obviously, it's a philosophy book, but yet we can use a lot of it for personal development. And even though some focused reading is required, and it's not the easiest language, what is beautiful about this book is that it's actual letters that are written among two friends, so you can choose how much reading you want to do each day. You don't have to read the whole book in one go, but you can nicely divide it into the natural sequence of the letters, which makes your reading more digestible. For me, this book is a real masterpiece of one of the greatest philosophers ever lived. Again, this is a very personal view, but this book helped me to understand Stoicism much better. And I believe it will also help you to do the same. To me, there is a lot of wisdom in the book. And again, what's nice about it is that it comes in chapters. It comes in letters. So you can read through the different letters, which all deal with different important topics in life, one by one. So let's take a look at a few quotes that resonated with me. The first one from Letters from a Stoic by Seneca would be the following one. That true friendship, which not hope, nor fear, no concern for personal advantage ever saunders, that friendship in which and for which people are ready to die. For me, this is a reminder that we should openly question ourselves and test our relationships. Why are we befriended with the people we are befriended? And are the people that we spend most time with our actual and good friends? We all know the saying that you are the average of the 5 people you spend most time with. And again, it's important to understand whom do you spend time with, and do you want to spend time with those people, yes or no? Do they push you towards the right development? I think it's important to understand whom do you like to spend time with and whom do you not like to spend time with. And then honestly reflect on whether you spend time with the right people. For me, I came up with the conclusion that I want to spend more time with the people I like and less time with the people I don't like. The second quote that I would like to discuss with you is the following. If you shape your life according to nature, you will never be poor. If according to people's opinion, you will never be rich. To me, there is so much meaning in this particular quote. First, it gives us an idea of the strength of nature. I think many of us have realized over the past 3 years how strong nature can be. And this is particularly true for myself. Most of my life I have lived in bigger cities and not spent too much time in nature, even though I love it. For the past 2 years, I have spent a lot of time by myself and a lot of time in nature by myself. Only surrounded with a very few friends, only surrounded by nature. And to be honest, at the moment, I would not want to go back to any city and live there. The second component of this quote really tells you that you shouldn't care too much about people's opinions. For me, you should anyway do what feels right as long as you're not hurting anyone else. You should listen to your gut feeling. You should do what feels right, and you should really not care what other people think about it. And the combination of the beauty of nature and the irrelevance of other people's opinions, for me, create a rich life. A rich life, for me, does not necessarily mean monetary wealth or having a lot of things. It means being in sync with yourself and living the richest life you can imagine. And another quote I would like to share with you from Letters from a Stoic by Seneca reads the following. The man, though, whom you should admire and imitate, is the one who finds it a joy to live and in spite of that is not reluctant to die. For me, this is a great reminder to live in the present moment and enjoy whatever is there. It tells me that we should focus on the happiness or on the situations that we have in control of this very moment. We should not work towards more happiness in the future because the present is really all we have. And at the same time, it reminds us not to be afraid to die. If you don't have regrets, if you don't have unfulfilled potential, if you live the present the way that you deem to be the best way for you, you will not be afraid to die because you're living a good life and you don't have to be afraid of missing out or not achieving something that you had planned for later. Don't postpone what's important to you. Follow your dreams and focus on your present. The next book I want to take a closer look at is Utopia by Sir Thomas More. It's a fairly quick read. I would say it took me like roughly 3 hours to read it, and I would categorize it as a political philosophy book. And even though it was first published in 1516, I would say it's a fairly easy read for each and everybody. And I think that's also the beauty of the book. Even though it's a few centuries old, there's a few nuggets in there that are still relevant. This shows to me that even though we as humanity evolve, Even though we have technology advancements, the same or similar questions still prevail. And it shows me that some of the questions in life will just stay always relevant, no matter the advancements, no matter the improvements in life. To me, there is still some revolutionary thinking and some fresh, interesting perspectives on life, and especially on life, how it could look like if we as humanity unite. So let's take a look at a few selected quotes from Utopia. The first one is the following: that now they almost universally agree that health is the greatest of all bodily pleasures. Sometimes we forget how important a good health is. A good health physically, but also a good health mentally. To be honest, I for some time had forgotten how important this is. I set the wrong priorities, and I know that there is a lot of people out there who are also setting other priorities than your health. You don't choose to eat well, you don't choose to exercise, you choose to work more, you choose to do more. But in the end, you can only perform in life, you will only find a happy and a good life if you make sure that you have good health, physically and mentally. With the start of COVID, I decided to dedicate at least 1 hour a day on my physical exercise and 1 hour on my mental exercise. I have continued to do so ever since, and I must say that my well-being has improved drastically. I was reminded how important the factor of health is in my life, and it also reminds me that having good health physically and mentally is not something we can take for granted. A lot of people do not have the opportunity for a good physical health, and some people do not have the best mental health. So if you are in a position that you can have good mental and good physical health, be grateful for it and make the most of it. The next quote that resonated with me reads as this: "Man's fears, solicitudes, cares, labors, and watchings would all perish in the same moment with the value of money, even poverty itself, for the relief of which money seems most necessary, would fall." I don't believe in monetary wealth as being the highest goal in life. And yet it is important to make enough money to be able to participate in today's societies. And I would argue that for most people and most societies, it's very difficult to interact without money, without this common demeanor that appreciates value and with which we can pay services, with which we can pay goods. I'm still reminded by this quote to make money your friend and not your enemy. I think it is important to work with money and not for it. And the final quote I want to read from Utopia is this one: "When they come from the funeral, they discourse of his good life and worthy actions, but speak of nothing oftener and with more pleasure than of his serenity at the hour of death." For me, it's a good reminder about sadness and death and about the celebration of life. For me personally, the day I die or the days after I died, I would like to see that my friends and my family come together and celebrate the life instead of being sad about me leaving this temporary human vessel. I think it is nice to celebrate a person's life in case somebody dies. I think it is important to understand what this person has made as an impact on each and everybody of us. And we should therefore not be sad, but we should celebrate the people that will leave this planet eventually. After all, as we've discussed earlier, all of us will die. And this should not be a sad moment in our lives. It should be the end of a lot of happy emotions and a lot of happy moments. The next book I would like to take a closer look at is In Pursuit of the Common Good by Newman A.E. Hotchner. I would categorize it as business, but also as a mindset book, and I guess it took me somewhat between 6 and 8 hours. To be honest, I'm not quite sure anymore. And for me, it was an easy, yet very entertaining read, because it's a true story about two friends who really just wanted to have some fun, who wanted to try out something, and who, in fact, changed the world by doing so. It's the true story of two friends who relentlessly reinvented and challenged the status quo, And it's the story of two friends who have changed the conditions of so many people to live a more happy and to live a more exciting life. This book, at the same time, will make you laugh and will make you think. And it explains the power of thinking outside the box and doing things the way you think it's the best way to do it, instead of sticking to the norms of an industry, of a society. And it also tells us to take risks. And it teaches us a lot of greatness and how to work on charitable activities. The first quote from In Pursuit of the Common Good I want to present is the following one. It is our philosophy that although we may disapprove of what you write, we will defend to the death your right to write it. For me, this is a very important quote that made me think about freedom of speech and freedom of writing. The freedom of expressing your very personal opinion on things. To me, I believe we have somewhat forgotten how to listen to each other, how to hear each other out. And to me, it is important that even though we do not share the same opinion on the same topic, it is very important that we make sure that you and I can express our different opinions on life and on important topics in life. So even if we disagree, I believe it's essential that we hear each other out and give each other the freedom to express ourselves. And for me, we should try to find truthful solutions instead of each and everybody preaching their mantra and sticking to the opinion that we once have created. As only if we have the ability to rethink our opinion, we will have the ability to learn and to develop. The second quote from this book reads like this. These were a couple of guys who were willing to take risks, had a great sense of humor, and were willing to try anything. So that opened up the idea that we could do something really special. For me, great things are created if you think outside the box. You can do good imitations. You can optimize processes and you can reinvent certain things. But only if you really think outside the box, if you consider options that have not been there before, you have the potential to create something great. It also reminds me that we should always keep our humor, that we should not take life too serious, and that we should enjoy the process of life instead of searching for something at the very end. And it also reminds me that a great team is priceless. If you work, if you live with the right people, if you surround yourself with the right people, life will be fun and life will be exciting, whatever you do. And that brings me to the final quote of the book In Pursuit of the Common Good. Paul had a lot of faith in everybody. He just assumed it was going to turn out all right. He never questions the ability of anybody. He never suggested that it was a hard task. For me, this speaks a lot about faith and belief in other people. Trusting other people. If you want to achieve something great, you must have the ability to trust other people. You're most likely not the best in all the components of life. And only if we work as a good team, only if we trust that other people have a good opinion, have a good approach on things, we will move forward. Trust yourself, but also be able to trust others, as your way may not always be the best way. And this quote also resonates with me because it speaks about the power of positive framing. If you, per default, believe in the good in people, you will have a much more enjoyable experience than if you believe in shortcomings and problems per default. The fifth book I want to talk about today is one that I have recommended to a lot of you guys in person already. In fact, it might be one of the books that I recommended most after I read it to friends and family. It's the book Humankind by Rutger Bregman. I would categorize it as psychology and philosophy, and I believe it took me roughly 8 hours to read the book. And to me, it's a science-backed elaboration on why humanity in fact is good and why we are not screwed up. For me, it was a very entertaining and also very eye-opening read. And that is because if you follow the news regularly, if you follow what's happening out there, you may get the impression that humanity is not so good. You may get the impression that everything is going down south and that nothing is under control. But if you read this book, which has a lot of relatable, meaningful, and evidence-based examples of why humanity is in fact good, you will gain a new perspective on things. And I hope that it will shine a different light on humanity as a whole for you as it did for me. There's a lot of great things happening out there, and we must talk about them. I can relate to that so nicely because this is one of the reasons why I created this podcast. And reading this book will give you multiple reasons why you should appreciate the life you're living at this very moment. So let's take a look at the first quote from Humankind by Rutger Bregman. It's when crisis hits, when the bombs fall or the floodwaters rise, that we humans become our best selves. Especially under the very current circumstances of our geopolitical situation, this is a true statement. We usually see a lot of solidarity happening in times of crisis. Totalitarian leaders try to divide people, divide humanity by creating those crises. But usually it backfires because the big masses are in fact helping each other out and standing together closer than before crisis. Most of the time, when crisis strikes, people unite, people stand together, and people fight together. And the solidarity witnessed in recent crisis shows us that, in fact, humanity is good. The majority of people stands together if things get tough. And for me, it's good to know that per default, people help each other and people do not neglect each other. And that is true for many crises we have witnessed in our history. And that is true for many crises that are currently ongoing. And this leads us to the second quote from the book that I would like to read out. That's a truth as old as time, because, like all the best things in life, the more you give, the more you have. That's true of trust and friendship, and it's true of peace. For me, this is a great reminder that giving is so much stronger than taking and having. For me, it captures the idea of karma, and for me, it reminded me to question myself. Am I a net giver or am I a net taker? And I invite you to do the very same. Look at the different pillars in your life. Look at the important areas of your life and question yourself. Do you give more or do you take and keep more? And again, I think if we reflect on it on a different level, if we look at the world as a whole, if we do look at what people are doing, there's a lot of people who are net givers and not net takers. There's a few people who take much more than they give. But as a humanity, we are giving creatures and we help each other out wherever we can. And there's another quote from Rutger Bregman's Humankind that resonated with me a lot. Treat people like dirt, and there will be dirt. Treat them like human beings, and they will act like human beings. I think this really talks about the interaction we have with each other. To me, if we create a humane environment, we will solve problems much faster than if we only do it by punishment. If we encourage people to do the right thing, and if we reward people for doing the right thing, if we incentivize them, I think we are much better off than if we just punish individuals or even whole societies. To me, the world will mirror your behavior. That's true for individuals, but that's also true for collectives and whole societies. If you are good to the world will be good to you. Again, this is a good reminder of karma to me. And the last book I would like to discuss in today's podcast episode on my 6 recommendations on books that you should read is Speed and Scale by John Doerr. I guess it took me roughly 8 hours to read this book. I now want to finish up with this action plan with tangible objectives and key results from which we can all learn on what to do and what to focus on in the next decades. It's an action plan to reduce emissions, and it gives us strategies on how to get to net zero by 2050. And for me, it was a very refreshing read, as it offers solutions. They might be high level, but it's still solutions instead of only raising concerns. We as humanity, we as inhabitants of this planet have serious challenges to deal with, and we must unite to solve them. I believe that we can achieve a lot if we only unite. And I believe that the climate change, in fact, is one of the biggest business opportunity of humankind ever. Speed and Scale describes tangible objectives and describes goals on how to get there. For me, it really is a must-read for each and everybody. So let's take a look at a few quotes from the book Speed and Scale by Doerr. Do we have enough time? We hope so, but we are fast running out of it. Do we have enough margin of error? No, we don't, not anymore. Do we have enough money? Not yet. Investors and governments are stepping up. To me, this is a great reminder why now is the time to act. We must start somewhere. We must start today, and we must have faith that innovation and technology will support us over the upcoming decades to do the right thing. And it's a good reminder that finally the rich, the powerful, and the influential have understood that climate change, in fact, is the biggest business opportunity of all time. Another quote that really resonated with me is the following one. Leaders respond to pressure. Pressure is created by movements. Movements are built by many thousands of individuals. To me, this is a reminder to each and everybody, to myself, to yourself listening, that we have impact. We can make changes. And we should start acting today. Start acting by finding a movement that serves your purpose. Find out what's important to you and do something about it. And you can choose to unite with people from around the corner, or you can choose to unite with people from all over the world. Today's technology allows us to unite with people from all over the world, and still we also need grassroots movements with people from the same areas that speak up and that want to change something. And in fact, your voice matters. Do something with it. And there's one more quote that I want to share with you guys from Speed and Scale by Doerr. It reads the following. We live better lives than our grandparents did. And they lived better lives than their grandparents did. We cannot be the generation that breaks that cycle. That said, this is not about our future legacy. It's about getting things done today. Again, for me, this is a great reminder that we are the first generation who has all the evidence, all the science-based evidence that we need to do something about the climate change. And at the same time, we are the last generation that actually can do something before things get irreversible. The living standards of humans on this planet have drastically improved. This is something we learn in Humankind. This is something we learn if we just look at statistical data. So we should make sure not to reverse the whole trend and leave this planet in a much worse state than we found it. All of us can do something. All of us can find an important cause, and all of us can act today. And with that, I want to ask you guys a few questions. Did you read some of the books that I just presented and talked about? What is your thoughts on them? Do you share my opinion on those books? Or where do you have a different understanding? What are book recommendations that you have for the community? And I would also be interested to understand, how do you choose your next books? Who influences you on which books to read next? And how often do you exchange your thoughts and ideas on particular books with friends or family? And finally, I would like to share an activity with you that I sometimes choose to do with friends of mine. And that is reading a book together. You first find a friend or even a group of friends. Then you choose a book, and then you read it together with those people. Currently, I am in fact reading New Earth by Eckhart Tolle with a good friend of mine. And it really broadens the horizon one more time, because we exchange learnings, we exchange interesting nuggets, and we can talk about what we've read. And for me, this is the next level of reading together with a friend or even with a group of friends. Did you ever try it? And if so, please make sure to comment how you liked it, which books you read, or if that inspires you, let me know which books you're gonna read together with your friend or together with a group of friends. And with that, we come to an end of today's episode of the Just Another Mindset podcast. Thank you for staying until the very end. If you enjoyed this episode, and if you're interested in what I'm reading and what I'm consuming in different media, you should also make sure to sign up for my newsletter. Since recently, I have updated my newsletter a little bit based on your request, and you will now find a section that discusses the book, the books, the articles I'm reading in this particular week, and I've also added a section where I discuss the podcast that I listen to throughout the week. You will get a weekly newsletter that basically summarizes the podcast episode that has been published. It gives you an idea of what I am reading, of what I am listening to. It gives you the Smile news, and it also gives you a quote of the week. If you don't want to miss out on all that great content anymore, make sure to sign up for the newsletter today. And also, if you enjoy this podcast and learn from it, please make sure to share this episode with a friend or two, and make sure to subscribe on Spotify and Apple. On Apple, you may leave up to a 5-star review and know that you will support me making more meaningful content like that by doing so. If there's any future topic or guest that you would like to hear more about on the Just Another Mindset podcast, please make sure to share it with me, either by commenting on YouTube, by sending a direct message on Instagram, or by sending a mail to contact@ismaelwondergarten.com. And if nobody told you lately, be reminded that you are worthy, you matter, and you can achieve anything you want.
Do more of what makes you happy.
Be yourself positive.
Change.
Just another mindset.